Please be seated. The court is now back in session, and again, I'd like to hand the floor to Judge Levine to continue putting further questions to the witness. You may proceed, Judge.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I crave your indulgence. A while ago, when I quoted the transcript of the 28th of July, those were indeed statements that were given by Doik and not by this witness. What misled me was that the statements were relayed during the testimony of this witness. Let us return to the list. Mr. Witness, you've had time to look at the list. Do you have any remarks to make? You have stated that you are not the person who drew up that list. Have you ever seen any lists of that nature? Lists on which names of persons who had to be withdrawn were compiled.
For such a document, I did not see it, and at least that I drew up were not the same as this one.
Alors, nous avons au dossier un certain nombre.
Question: we have on record a number of documents that are presented in more or less the same way. I'll show you another document, and it is document E3/2285, and the ERN in Khmer is 0000 9110 to 9111.
L'ERN.
ERN in English 00873220 to 26. That is a list of persons who were removed on the 29th of August 1977. And here again, we have a number of prisoners who are mostly women, but we also have children on that list, including young children. Since number 15 on that list is a child aged 7, and there are annotations on the last column. The annotation concerning this child is as follows. I will read it out in English because the document exists only in English.
Born, sometimes lazy to walk, be instructed but not follow. This person used to be withdrawn one time, but hospitalized. Il y a
Question: there are other annotations, including annotations concerning a number of prisoners who apparently didn't work sufficiently fast, or prisoners considered as being lazy. Did you ever see that kind of list, witness?
As for this list, my office did not draw up such a list, and I did not know the origin of this list.
alors pour les besoins du
Question: for the record, let me point out that there is another list among others, and it is a list of persons who were removed on the 31st of December 1977. And here again, they are mostly women, and in the annotations in the last column, it is indicated that these are women who were admitted in the hospital and they were considered as always ill, and they were hospitalized and they were not working. And the reference of this document are as follows: Khmer ERN 000090 97 to 98, and the reference in English is 00873202 to 08. So witness, as regards persons who are to be executed, you only received lists that had been handed to you by Hall, and on which Doig had made annotations. Is that correct?
This is the list for the prisoners to be taken out from Hall only.
Alors, vous avez également dit...
Question. You also stated in your testimony or interview that you also received lists of prisoners who had died of ill health. I would like you to be shown a document, and it is E3/3181.
Ce document porte...
This document is titled as follows: Names of prisoners who died on the 3rd of October 1977, died of ill health. There are 3 names on the list, and below that we have the date on which the list was drawn up, 8th of October 1977, and the annotation already removed is on it.
Il y a plusieurs tableaux.
There are several tables, including a table whose ERN in English is as follows: 00784613, and the table is titled
Of disease or committed suicide by hanging. Et il y a le...
There is the name of a woman, aged 20. She was from Regiment 152. She was the Deputy Chief of Battalion 53, and it's indicated that she fled. Do you recognize such lists, witness? And can you tell the chamber to whom you gave those lists, if you had seen them? If she did hang herself, correction by the interpreter.
Repeat. In relation to document indicating the death of Chin, was probably a report by the medic to Hall.
Et donc ce...
Question. So, this document was forwarded to you so that you should add the name of that person on the list of executed persons. Is that correct?
thief who gave it to me, he added the name of the person who was executed.
Bien, je vous remercie.
Very well. Thank you. Let us now talk of a list that has already been presented to you by the co-prosecutor. You stated that you are not the person who drew up that list, but I have a number of questions for you. These are lists of daily checks of the numbers of prisoners, and it is document E3/8763, and the ERN in Khmer is 4008083. Can the witness be shown this document? And could the parties be provided with this document as well? I have a number of copies that can be shown to the parties.
Voilà. Ce document.
Question? Very well. This document is translated, and the translation is available with the ERNs 00, 18, 29, 80 to 81.
Voilà, donc monsieur le témoin.
Very well. Witness, do you remember the document? Is the same as the kind of document shown you yesterday by the co-prosecutor. There are two tables on the document. The first table is at the top of the page, and on it you will find two big columns. One is for the army, and the second is for autonomous zones and regions. There is a first line on which there is a figure provided, and if I understand, that figure it represents the number of detainees the day before the document was drawn up. And below the column for the army, you have another column, 164, 160, 450, 703, 801, 920, 377, 488, 290, and so on. These are autonomous zones and regions. We have the Southwest Zone, you have the West Zone, that is WV, and then NW for the Northwest, NZ for the North Zone, and then EZ for the East Zone, and NE for the Northeast. So 106, 103, 105, 405. And we also have Regiment 152. Are these columns familiar to you? Did you ever have to classify, particularly in biographies, persons depending on their divisions of origin or their zones of origin?
I cannot recall clearly about the biographies, whether they were filed according to the zones they came from, or whether according to their entry date. However, to my understanding, they were found according to the zones and the sectors they came from. However, I must say this is not a clear recollection of what happened since it happened many years ago. So I'm still unclear as to whether the biographies were found according to the zones and the sectors or according to the date of entry.
Question. That is not the question I put to you. My question to you was whether in the biographies there were columns that were entered corresponding to the columns on the first line, that is columns according to divisions, zones of the origin or autonomous zones and regions of origin. Did you have to include such information in the biographies?
In the biographies, usually it mentions information as to which division or which zone the person came from. For example, if the person came from Division 703, that information will be stated.
D'accord.
Question. Very well. Let me point out that on this table, you have the figure for the previous day. For the current day, you have the name of persons who entered for each category, the name of persons who were removed for each category, and the last line, they can do a tally of the total number. Then you have a second table at the bottom of the page, and it is presented in more or less the same way. You have the first column, which concerns state ministries. Then you have a second column for transport, and a third column is titled bandit. Then there's another column titled spy. There's another column for the railway, another column for the port, and another column for the state warehouse. Now, the translators subsequently indicated that there were sub-columns in which suggested translations were provided. Can you confirm that those columns correspond to the reality? So below the first column you have state ministries. The first column has two letters, PR, and the translator suggested that it could have to do with the Ministry of State Commerce. Can you confirm that in using the words PR, it designated the Ministry of State?
FULRO is an acronym. It refers to the state's commerce.
Donc ensuite, on a une colonne.
Question. We have another column wherein we find IND. Does that correspond to industries?
Yes, that refers to the industry.
La colonne suivante.
Question. The next column bears the inscription PW for Public Works. Was that indeed the case? Does it stand for Public Works?
Yes, that is for a public work.
La rubrique suivante.
Question. On the next column, we have an inscription which would represent the energy sector. Is that correct? Is that the case?
Yes, that is correct. It refers to the energy sector.
Alors, est-ce que vous pouvez...
Question. Can you simply tell us what the next series of abbreviations stand for? The next one is FA. What does that stand for?
It refers to the printing house.
Alors,
Question. Let me point out that the translators had suggested that it could be Foreign Affairs, that is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Witness, please hold on, and Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Merci, peut-être.
Thank you. Perhaps I could be of some assistance. We see that in the Khmer version, we have, I believe, all the names of ministries mentioned, except for two, where we have only an abbreviation. And this is the basis for the translators' suggestion that they thought it was Minister of State and NP Printing House, and the others are different because the names of the ministries are given in full. So I don't think it is necessary to ask the witness to read each column. Thank you.
Monsieur...
Question by Judge Lavergne. Witness, can you confirm what the co-prosecutor has just stated, that on each column you have the full name of the ministry, the unit, with the exception, perhaps, of printing house?
Yes, they are fully valid except two, which are the acronyms.
Alors, après, on...
Question. After that, we have the columns for land transport and water transport. Then you have another column for bandit. What does that column stand for? Is that a column you used, and what does it pertain to?
There was rarely any case denoting bandits. However, usually that would be noted for those who deserted the rank.
La colonne d'après.
Question. The next column is for spies. Can you give us the definition of spies as far as the administration of S-21 was concerned? Who were those considered as spies?
Spies usually refers to the Vietnamese who trespass into Cambodian territory, namely Kampong Sao.
Monsieur Suosti.
Mr. Suosti, according to you, Vietnamese who arrived in S21 could have been placed under another category or in another column than for those who are considered as spies.
When Vietnamese soldiers were arrested, they would be labeled as spies. And at my location, we could not question them extensively, as we only needed to take their brief biography, and then they would be questioned at length by the interrogation unit.
Mais sur ces...
Question. But in these summary biographies, you have to fill out the column regarding their position or their activities. Would you have indicated spy or something else?
For Vietnamese people, since we did not have the ability to ask them extensively, and usually when they were arrested, for example, in Svay Rieng, they would be labeled as spies. So that we could complete the form, since we ourselves were not competent in the Vietnamese language. And later on, it would be dependent on the interrogation units to question them at length.
Bien, je précise.
Question. Very well. Let me point out that there are large numbers of documents of this nature. There is a list of daily controls of numbers. We see a number of them in the documentaries of Ankara, and we will have the opportunity to revisit those documents. Now, witness, for purposes of clarity, can you tell the Chamber whether all Vietnamese prisoners were considered and listed as spies?
Rubrique ennemi n'existe pas.
The column enemy does not exist. In principle, all those who were listed were already considered as the enemy.
When they were brought into S21, every one of them was considered an enemy.
Non.
In the French channel I heard, I don't know if it's a translation issue, but sometimes I hear the witness speaking about enemy and also speaking about spy. So what is the word you are using, witness? Are you telling us that they were enemies, or are you telling us that they were spies?
For Vietnamese people, at the place where I draw up the list, since we could not ask them extensively about their position, who would instruct me, that for soldiers they would be labeled as spies, and if they were civilians from Kampong Sam, they will be labeled as fishermen. So then we would know where they came into the country, whether by sea at Kampong Sam or whether by on land at Svai Rieng.
Fine, I'll get back later to the Vietnamese prisoners. I also would like to speak about another aspect of your work. On top of having to take the biographies of the prisoners, were you also in charge of taking the biographies of the S-21 staff?
Est-ce que quelqu'un
Or was someone else in charge of doing that job?
For S-21 staff, Taho instructed me to make the short biographies, but I made the biographies only for those who work within the guards unit. I produced biographies only for those who worked in the guards unit.
So there was someone else who would write up the biographies of those working, for example, in the interrogation unit.
Est-ce que vous savez
And do you know who was in charge of doing that?
The ones who made the biography of all the staff at S-21, it was Main who was in charge of that.
As far as you know, did some staff members at S-21 go work at times in other detention centers? Do you know if there was any kind of rotation between the S-21 security center and other security centers? That is to say, were there any staff members at S-21 who went to work elsewhere?
As far as I know, staff from S-21 were not rotated to work elsewhere. So what I said here is based on my knowledge, and I said it based on my knowledge of things going on within my guards unit.
nous avons
A last question regarding this point. We have a witness by the name of Mr. Chomse who said that there was someone by the name of Mr. No who was from S-21 and then who went to work in a security center at Okanseng, and that he had brought with him a certain number of confessions. Do you know someone by the name of No who had worked at S-21?
As I told you earlier, I had good knowledge only about things that happened within the guard unit. As for other matter, probably he was assigned by Dutch, and it was not my knowledge about that.
I would like to discuss the last topic because I don't have much time left. As you know, you said in your testimony that you had attended training sessions. Do you remember having attended training sessions, in particular during the celebration of the Khmer Rouge victory, during which all of the S-21 staff was grouped together and where allegedly a film was screened, a film in which you could see allegedly Vietnamese prisoners confessing a certain number of things? Do you remember having seen such a film, or do you remember such a film?
Talking about the screening of the film, I have never seen it. During each time I went for a training session, it was just a short. It was just a short training session. I did not spend long time there because I had to come back and do my job.
Est-ce que
May the interpreter say again what he just said, because we have a problem here in our headset apparently, and so we cannot really catch what's being said.
As I said earlier, that I did not spend a long time at the training session to celebrate the anniversary of the victory, because I had to come back to do my job. Sometimes I attended the session in the morning and I could not attend the afternoon session because my job required me urgently to do it.
Well, witness, I'm going to ask the AV unit to screen part of a documentary whose title is Cambodia, Kampuchea, and which is indexed as follows: E32354R. So the excerpt begins at 13 minutes and 29 seconds and ends at 13 minutes and 40 seconds. And this excerpt is being screened because it possibly may correspond to a description that Him Hui gave of a film that allegedly was screened before the entire S-21 staff during an anniversary of the DK victory. So is it possible to screen this excerpt?
President, the AV unit, please show the film on the screen as requested by the judge.
Voilà, donc
So, witness, well, I asked that the excerpt be screened without the soundtrack deliberately because there are comments on the soundtrack and I don't want these comments to disturb the screening of this excerpt. But now, having seen this excerpt, does this remind you of anything?
Because it happened a long time ago, I cannot recall it now. My memory also does not serve me well.
est-ce que vous...
Did you recognize some people in this excerpt?
In this video excerpt, I saw Pol Pot, who delivered a speech.
pendant la...
So during the decay period, you had an opportunity to see Pol Pot. Did you ever see Pol Pot?
During decay regime, I rarely saw Pol Pot. I saw him on documentary film when he went to visit China or other places.
During the training sessions, was Vietnam discussed and the Vietnamese?
As I said earlier, during the training session, they raised the topic about the 17 April victory. At that time, I did not pay much attention.
Witness, you never heard the expression that the Vietnamese are enemy number one, or that it is necessary to hate the Vietnamese?
During that regime, the Vietnamese were treated as the enemy.
Bien, je vous remercie beaucoup.
Well, thank you very much, witness. I have no further questions to put to you. I'm aware that I kind of went beyond my time.
President, thank you, Judge. It is now convenient time for the adjournment. The chamber will resume its hearing on Monday, 6 June 2016 at 9 o'clock. The hearing next Monday, the chamber will continue hearing the testimony of witness Suthi. Thank you, Mr. Suthi. The hearing of your testimony as a witness has not yet concluded. You are therefore invited to come back again on Monday. Thank you, Mun Sawan. And the chamber also would like to invite you back to the courtroom next Monday. Court officer, in collaboration with Visu, please make necessary transport arrangement to send Mr. Suthi to where he is staying and invite him back to the courtroom next Monday at 9 o'clock. Security personnel are instructed to bring Khieu Samphan and Nuon Chie back to the detention facility and have them returned to the courtroom on Monday, 6 June 2016 before 9 o'clock. The court is now adjourned.